Our next guest has spent nearly 3 decades leading wholesale distribution. He's a best-selling author of Foundations of a Giant, a branch's boss's blueprint for wholesale distribution, a field-tested leadership guide that reached the #1 bestseller spot in distribution and warehouse management on Amazon shortly after launch. Just super impressive. Brian spent more than 20 years at Ferguson Enterprises. So today he serves as Group Vice President at Allside, where he drives growth, margin, execution, and leadership development across multiple locations. And he's joining us today from Raleigh, North Carolina. Brian, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the time, Justin.
This concept of leadership in the ivory tower and the sort of top down and push down leadership, but the concept of frontline leadership in building distribution, it's like that branch manager role is just, it's the hub of so many things.
Yeah, people say, hey, we'll define leadership, and it's at a very basic level. I gathered all this knowledge. Did I share it with others? And that's where I've been reflecting lately is how do I take this knowledge and then build up the next group of leaders, not necessarily under me, but just within distribution and others.
Yeah, I think that's such an underrated skill set. It's taking stuff from the top. It's taking things from bottom per se, taking things from the side. Is leadership from a frontline perspective. I kind of describe my version, but I'd love to hear from you. Like, why is it such a critical leverage point in distribution?
Because eventually every strategy gets handed down to the branch to actually execute, right? That's typically the way I view it. And you can have a great pricing strategy or a new technology, goals from corporate, but if the branch manager or frontline leadership team, if they're weak or inconsistent, the customer eventually feels it. And so the branch manager usually sets the tone. They determine how the branch is run actually day to day, things like the customer experience and standards like urgency and accountability, right? Those things are super important, all of it. And it's really one of the hardest jobs in distribution, in my opinion. I talk about it a lot like it's a 3-legged stool, right? Where you're balancing people, operations, and sales at a high level. And you can be weak in one of those stools, right? Not everybody's going to be an all-star in all three, and you can survive. But if you're weak in 2 of those stools, your stool is going to fall over. That's why the role is so important. And everything has to get executed at the branch level. Then you throw in the customer experience and safety on top of that, you got a pretty full plate on your hands as a manager in distribution.
What does that actually look like? You know, the 3 legs of the stool, and you got to kind of be like, does it actually show up? And what impact do you see at the business in terms of how do you know that's happening? Personality, it's like, it's hard to kind of like pull everything. It's just like, did we make it? Right? It's like, and it's like, that's kind of your metric. So it's like, how does it actually show up? Like,
yeah. So through my lens, the managers I learned from and that I was taught, they usually brought this calm into the branch when things got hectic, right? There's chaos and noise all around you. The best leaders I experienced and witnessed and saw run these organizations very smoothly is that they brought this sense of calm and peace, even when things got chaotic. You know, anybody can manage when things are calm, right? Like anybody can do that. The real test is what happens in the branch when the counter's backed up and trucks are late, or you have an upset customer, you have an inventory discrepancy, employees are stretched, and all those things. What I'll see is weak leaders, the ones that aren't strong, they're always reacting to the day. The good ones, these are the ones that help the branch operate smoother and more consistently, even when things are spiraling out of control and it feels like there's chaos just all around them. I also think a really strong leader in distribution almost always has built a team that's strong behind him or her, right? In other words, they're developing these disciples under their leadership. To your question, like, you usually see the output in things like better margins, lower turnover, stronger customer trust. And one I like to often say to my managers is, hey, fewer surprises, right? I've seen managers with a COD customer where they're letting the customer take material and they're keeping a running list of what they have.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, you're out of pocket 20 grand, you haven't gotten anything and your material's gone. And I mean, not only is it a policy violation in every distribution channel in operation, but that can get you terminated. If I see that, I automatically know we've got a problem here.
These branches are running very much on their own. To your point about the importance of this role, it's like that person may not have someone from corporate come visit for 6 months.
Yeah,
And if they do, even it's like when they're walking around and kind of going through the motions, right? So the actual oversight into what's going on there day to day, because you've got 15 things going on, you're not organized, you're out of control, they're there, you kind of know that customer. Okay, just for now, and then it just spirals. There isn't a lot of babysitting going on in these situations. I think your point is well taken around the calmness and the steadiness, the kind of the level-headedness to a degree, because of the urgency of products and jobs get delayed and you get emotional. Kind of need to lead by example in that regard.
Yeah. And even to shrink that example, right? When things are chaotic in the branch, you've got customers who forget things, right? And they'll tell someone in the warehouse, hey man, like I forgot to grab this product. Would you mind running it and adding it to my invoice? Well, the warehouse manager or the warehouse associate walks by the branch manager who's running around crazy in the branch, and he tells the manager, hey, add this to this invoice and make sure it gets billed to the customer. Well, the manager forgets that 5 minutes later, right? I've witnessed where I've circled back where I'm watching a branch and I'll go to the manager an hour later and say, hey, did you forget to add that piece to the customer's invoice? Inevitably, they always forget. And so that type of stuff, we got inventory accidentally walking out the door, not anything egregious or on purpose, but that's just how branches all operate often.
The thing that's coming to my mind is we're talking about this sort of chaotic branch, corporate sort of removed from the day-to-day, quite frankly, as they should be. What does a corporate get wrong when they're trying to think about development or leadership development, broadly speaking? Were they missing the mark?
Yeah, so there's a lot of initiatives, right? Corporate, we have a lot of initiatives. The ideas are fantastic often, but a lot of times the initiatives get pushed down without fully understanding what the branch is already dealing with operationally day to day. The branches have phones ringing and deliveries moving in and out. They often have staffing issues. There's a customer upset. There's an inventory concern. Then another initiative gets added and it sounds good in a meeting, right? And it really is. It sounds great, but automatically that creates more operational friction within the branch. I used to tell folks at corporate to think about the branch manager like a juggler, right? You're juggling these balls and you've got HR and you've got sales and you've got safety. And then you can only keep so many balls up in the air before something hits the ground. Well, the problem is the things that hit the ground matter a lot, right? So if safety hits the ground, we got a big problem. If the customer experience or margins or those types of things hit the ground, that's a big deal. And so again, corporate leaders, myself as a leader with my managers, we have to choose very carefully what we ask to layer on top of a branch manager's already busy agenda. That's kind of my take and my feedback on corporate and what they think at times. They're always well-intentioned and there's always something that's great that they're trying to add on. It's just a matter of can we execute it in the field?
Assuming that people aren't born to do this work, right? How do you develop somebody to be an effective leader in this capacity?
Yeah, so this is kind of what you mentioned the book at the start. This is what I write a lot about, right? Most leadership development in this world, at least in my 30 years experience, happens during the live work, not anywhere away from it. Some of the best coaching moments where I've seen and that I've experienced is when something's going wrong, like a major customer issue, an inventory mistake, a late delivery. That's the time where you pull someone aside and say, let me walk you through the fire with me and really help you understand. That's really been my best ability to learn and try what I share with others. And ultimately, this has really hit me lately. And I wrote a lot about this is leaders got to stay close to the floor, right? You got to be close to the floor. You got to look people in the eye. You got to understand what they're really going through. What are their headaches that they're experiencing in the warehouse? I will often say, you got to remember where you came from, right? I spent a lot of early time in the warehouse in my career, and I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah.
But I always told myself, if I continue to move up, I will always remember where I came from. And you got to get down in the weeds. You got to get on the floor. You can't coach if you never see it. And so you got to get in there. You got to look people in the eye and ask them, hey, what are you dealing with right now? And what do you think the solution is? I just think coaching in the moment and pulling people aside and give them real world examples of what's happening. And not to mention, let's explain the why. That's another big one. Let's make sure people understand why we're actually working towards the goal we're working towards.
And this is actually for just my own experience. A lot of people on our team are very skilled at these super obscure board games. They pull these games. I'm like, I don't know what you watch them play. I'm like, what the hell is this? Right. And they'll try to explain it to me. I've actually started using this in interviews a bit to identify this process. I say, explain how to play a game to me. Because what I is the best people at sort of the leadership that you guys just described is they start with the object of the game. If someone's ever tried to describe a card game to you and omitted the point of the game, it is very difficult to track because you don't have an anchor, right? And so to your point, the why is so critical to that development, because at least we know what all of this conversation is working towards to a degree. And we have an object that we're drafting towards. I just honestly think it sounds so simple and obvious, but not always practiced.
No, not at all. Maybe even rarely practiced.
And part of what we're doing today is in this series, we're very, very passionate about building a community. I think at the end of the day, almost going back to what we talked about before, servant leadership, doing things for the greater good, not necessarily for any other reason, quite frankly. And so in that kind of idea of like, what's a leadership or execution problem you genuinely want to work through with a room full of operators? What would be easier if nobody was solving it alone?
The one that really hits home to me, especially in my world, in distribution, is how do we develop stronger leaders, frontline leaders in distribution before they ever get put in the seat, right? A lot of people get promoted because they were strong individually, but nobody really teaches how to lead operationally under pressure. Then suddenly they're a manager and they're responsible for people and the customers and margin enhancement and inventory and safety and culture all at once. In my opinion, distribution still has a huge opportunity to get better at preparing people for leadership. Before the pressure ever hits. I'm thinking of things like P&L training ahead of time, operations 101. Like, what can we teach? Let's just call it an inside salesperson that has raised their hand and said, hey, I want to be in a leadership role. I want to be in a management role in 12 to 18 months. Man, let's get in front of them now. Let's pull them aside. Let's talk about house account strategies and what right inventory management looks like. And heck, give them real world HR scenarios and don't give them the answers to the test. Ask them how they would work through those things. That's the part that really lands with me because I just have a lot of passion for this. And I've just seen too many weak or poor managers in the role. And I have to step back and go, is it their fault? That's the part that bothers me. Like, is it truly their fault? Have they not been coached at all? And when I see that, and I have a lot, it's frustrating. And I just think it's such a great opportunity for the industry.
Somebody who has pretty much only been a business owner for most of my career, I've been through a lot of obviously failed hires, and it's always my fault. It was the bad fit for the job, rushed the process on the hire, didn't act when I should have, not enough training to your point. I think that this is so key. Because I think there's two things there. There's one, there is get ahead of the training before they're in the role.
That's right.
But identify a path where someone can put their hand up and say, I want to be in that role. Because in the absence, you don't even know, you're just sort of throwing darts in the dark. And who wants to do P&L training? And we're like, I don't know, because it's abstract to me. I don't know what that means to me, you know? So having a leadership development track, almost at least a conversation around one in an organization, really powerful, I think.
I'm passionate about it because I experienced this, right? I got lucky. Not all of us get lucky. I grew up in a very successful branch early in my career. I had a great general manager who kept getting promoted and luckily brought me with him on a couple of those promotions. And I just got to learn, right? He'd pull me aside on one-on-ones and say, hey, where do you want to be? We always use the term, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was always riding the fence. Well, I want to be in outside sales or I want to be in management. And I never wanted to say which one because I wanted to raise both hands. So they would put things in front of me. I would stay after work and I would review an invoice preview report with the ops director. They would give me a list of 20 cold house accounts and say, you want to do some damage on the sales side? Here you go. Good luck. So at least I had those opportunities early on to kind of pave my own way, share some of those successes. And I always valued that early in my career, just how much they leaned into my personal training and development. It just seems rare. I don't see that in a lot of organizations.
I mean, many of us, we were born into the Western world in this era. We're all default lucky to a degree. Yes. However, the fact that he was getting promoted, he was bringing you with, I'm going to say was very accretive to your work ethic, what you were doing, because he recognized part of the promotion is what Brian's doing. Right. So I'm going to just take an opportunity to give you a bit of credit on actually helping him move along and him being wise enough to identify that we don't get places alone and being able to pull through and say, this is the group that's helped me get there. So it's one of these great things where charity and giving is one of those most selfish things we can do, right? He's like, I'm going to give back to you by promoting you because shit, man, you're going to help me, right? So it's a good fit, right?
It's a long story, but I'll make it short. I'm in Richmond, Virginia. I get a call from him on a Thursday afternoon. He says, hey, we have a manager that we've just moved on from. The branch is in disarray. It's in North Carolina. There's 8 or 10 employees and they're all getting ready to walk out the door. Can you be there Monday? I know your wife's 7, 8 months pregnant back here in Richmond, but you're the guy to fix this thing. And, and I did. And it was my first management experience, first opportunity. And it's really the reason I fell in love with management and leadership. Just that 2 years of turning that branch around, just fell in love.
So you're in North Carolina now. Is that what brought you there? Are you there from that moment?
And here, 21 years now since that move, couple different moves and promotions. But then I fell in love with Raleigh and decided I didn't want to go anywhere for a while.
Raleigh's a good place, man. Not to go like too far off track, but as a Canadian, we spend time in various parts in Toronto. So we're actually pretty close and get to Raleigh in 2-hour flight. But I spent most of my early career, because being in tech in California, I lived in California for a while and spent most of my time on the West Coast. And I had spent so much time this last year in the Southeast, where I actually spent very little time previously. And man, I'm loving the Southeast right now. I'm spending more time there. I'm loving spending time there. I was in Charlotte a few weeks ago, and something about it is really growing on me. And I'm loving the Southeast right now. There's a bit of I don't want to say a renaissance, but it's growing. You can feel like a maturity down there a little bit. It's diversifying. I think I'm changing a bit. I think it's changing a bit.
Funny enough, so all of my friends are in tech, right? And they're super sharp, right? Smart women, men. When they ask me about, hey, tell me about your career and what you do, and they'll say, hey, isn't that pretty simplistic? Right? Isn't distribution just product moving from point A to point B?
It should be.
Everything in between is gray, and that's where we. And so I'll start sharing some stories, and they're like, "Wow, okay, it's a lot more intricate than we ever gave it credit for."
And even just from a transport perspective, the types of equipment you guys need. It could be flatbeds, it could be LTL, it could be your own truck, just a pickup truck. It's all day, every day, any day, and everything's on demand right away. When people think about distribution, they think about more of this throughput, this machinery of like POs that were cut 6 months ago by Walmart. Not to say those are easy. We have customers like that and it's still hard in its own right, but there's so much more hand-to-hand combat in building distribution than there is in other categories. So much more.
And a lot of it's very manual still, right? There are WMS run warehouses that run way more efficiently than the ones that aren't, but I would say the majority of, or at least 75% of distribution is still manual, right? So if a 3-week tenured warehouse employee puts plywood in the wrong part of the warehouse at the wrong size, and the other 3-month tenured gentleman pulls it, there's a chance that gets shipped wrong, right? Those small things that seem so simple. It is amazing how many shipping errors there are in our industry. I've run a warehouse with WMS and it does run a lot more efficiently, but it's a whole different world with building material products.
Yep, I concur. Okay, rapid fire time.
Okay.
So what's one leadership habit that compounds over time?
Building strong teams compounds over time.
What's one thing corporate often misses about branch life?
Just how many interruptions and decisions happen every day.
What's the fastest way for a leader to gain trust?
Oh, man. Love this question. Show up consistently, do what you say you're going to do. And if you're early in your management career, look for an obstacle to remove from somebody's day that nobody else has been able to do.
The word I'm going to use just to double down on that is stamina. I think stamina is such an underrated skill. And just to your point, just showing up every day and having the stamina to see it through. What's one phrase leaders should stop saying?
There's a lot.
Yeah.
I'd probably go really simple.
I have some that come to mind, but go ahead.
I'd probably just pivot back to a single word and say yes. Leaders who say yes to everything, they create just this chaos for not only themselves, but for their employees as well.
The power of no to do. And you know what? Again, as a young leader, particularly hard to do. So it's actually really, really strong answer.
I'll add to what I would encourage leaders to learn is to say, I was wrong or I made a mistake. Right? Learn to say those two things and you're going to go really far.
What's one lesson from your career you wish you learned earlier?
I had a manager tell me when I was young in my career, he used the term bloom where you're planted. I was always chasing the next opportunity really before fully executing in the seat I already had. And so that's always stuck with me. And I use it now just as the term with some younger inside sales folks or a manager who's been in the role for a year and said, hey, I'm ready for the next big opportunity. I'm quick to share, hey, love it. love your passion, love your motivation, but let's make sure we bloom where you're planted, and here's some opportunities to do that. So for me, it was bloom where you're planted.
The way I had that told to me is just people tell me I'm impatient. And I think that's sense, right? It's like, it's patience.
Very much so.
When you were describing your earlier life, I'm like, well, you sound like an entrepreneur.
Honestly, that was what attracted me to this industry. My dad was in it. I said, I'm never going to do that. Right. And I said that because the guy was working like 60, 65 hours a week. But then I just fell in love. Like when they said, hey, we're going to give you your own branch, to me, that was entrepreneurship. You want to run it, you've got some controls, go too far out of your lane. But for the most part, you make the decisions day to day. And I love that. And that's what made me stay in it to this day.
It's lovely. And lastly, where can people find your book, Foundations of a Giant?
I can find it on Amazon. You can search for my name, Brian Eason, or Foundations of a Giant. They'll find it right away.
Brian, really nice seeing you, man.
Yeah, appreciate you having me. Thanks so much, Justin.
Okay, man. Take care.